Have you ever sat down on a Sunday night, opened a fresh notebook, and written out the most beautiful plan of your life? You know the one. You're going to wake up at 5 in the morning. You're going to hit the gym 4 times a week. You're going to read 30 pages a day, drink 3 liters of water, learn a new language, build that side business, finally finish that course you bought 2 years ago. You feel electric. You feel unstoppable. You go to bed thinking, this time is different. This time I'm really going to do it. And then Wednesday comes, maybe Thursday if you're lucky, and suddenly that beautiful plan is sitting on your desk like a quiet little judge, untouched, unfinished, mocking you in silence. And that voice in your head whispers the same thing it always does. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just stick to anything? If that sounds familiar, I need you to stop for a second and listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you might change the way you look at yourself forever. The problem was never you. It was never your willpower, your discipline, or some broken part of your character. The problem was the size, the shape, the way you set it all up from the very beginning. And by the time we're done here, you're going to understand exactly why almost everyone you know struggles with consistency, and what a small group of people quietly do differently to make it look effortless. So take a breath, get comfortable, because over the next few minutes, we're going to walk through 8 ways to stay consistent, and I promise you, by the end, you'll never look at habits the same way again. Let's start with the first one, and honestly, this might be the most important lesson of them all. Lesson 1. Start so small you can't say no. Here's something most people get wrong from the very first day. When we decide to start something new, we almost always think the real enemy is laziness. We tell ourselves we just need more motivation, more discipline, more grit. But that's not what's actually happening inside your head. The real enemy is something much quieter, much sneakier. It's the size of the task itself. Think about the last time you tried to build a new habit. The moment your brain heard the words, I'm going to work out for an hour every single day, what happened inside you? Did you feel excited? Maybe for a second. But underneath that excitement, there was something else. A tightness. A little voice that said, that's a lot. That's going to be hard. That's going to take time we don't really have. And just like that, before you even started, your mind began searching for an escape route. This is something almost nobody talks about. Human beings aren't lazy, not in the way we've been told. We're actually wired to act. Watch any toddler for 10 minutes, and you'll see we're built for movement, for curiosity, for doing. What we're not built for is pressure. The moment something feels heavy in our minds, we instinctively pull away. It's not weakness, it's biology. Your brain is constantly scanning for threats, and a giant, overwhelming task looks exactly like a threat. So it does what it was designed to do. It protects you. It tells you, not today, maybe tomorrow. Let's just relax for now. And this is where so many of us get stuck. We're standing on Monday morning with this enormous mountain in front of us, and we wonder why our legs feel frozen. We think there's something wrong with us. We compare ourselves to that person on Instagram who seems to do it all, and we feel smaller and smaller. But what we don't see is that the person who actually succeeds, the one who builds something real over months and years, isn't climbing the same mountain we are. They're not staring up at the peak. They're just taking the first step, and then another, and another, while we're still trying to summon the courage to begin. I want you to try something with me. Imagine I walked up to you right now and said, you have to do 100 push-ups every morning for the next year. How does that feel? Heavy, right? Even reading that sentence, something in your chest probably tightened. Your brain is already preparing excuses. You're already thinking about your wrists, your shoulders, your schedule, the days you'll be tired. You haven't moved a muscle, and you're already exhausted. Now imagine I said something different. Imagine I said, do 2 push-ups. Just 2. Right after you brush your teeth in the morning. That's it. That's the whole plan. How does that feel? Notice what just shifted. The tightness is gone. The excuses don't even bother showing up because there's nothing to argue against. 2 push-ups isn't a threat. 2 push-ups isn't a mountain. 2 push-ups is a joke, almost. So easy you'd feel ridiculous skipping it. And here's the magic that almost nobody understands. Once you actually drop down and do those 2 push-ups, something incredible happens. You don't stop. You do 4. You do 10. Sometimes you do 20. Not because you forced yourself, but because the hardest part was never to work. The hardest part was starting. Once you're already on the floor, momentum takes over. Your body's already in position. Your mind's already engaged. And quitting feels stranger than continuing. This is what almost every successful person figured out, often by accident. The ones who write books didn't sit down telling themselves they'd write 3,000 words a day. They told themselves they'd open the document. That's it. Just open it. Sit in front of it. The ones who got into the best shape of their lives didn't promise themselves they'd train like athletes. They promised themselves they'd put on their workout clothes. That's the whole goal. Put on the shorts, lace up the shoes, step outside. What happens after that is a bonus. Let me tell you about a woman named Sarah. She's in her mid-30s, lives in a small apartment in Brooklyn, works a job that drains most of her energy by 6 in the evening. For years, she'd been telling herself she wanted to become a runner. Not a competitive one, just someone who runs. Someone who could go out on a Saturday morning and move her body and feel alive. Every January, she'd make the same promise. This year, I'm going to run 3 times a week, 45 minutes minimum. By March, the running shoes would be back in the closet. Then one winter, something shifted. A friend told her about this idea of making the habit so small it felt almost embarrassing. Sarah laughed at first, but she was desperate enough to try. So her new rule became this. Every morning, before work, she had to put on her running clothes and walk out the front door. That's it. She didn't have to run. She didn't even have to walk far. She just had to step outside. If she wanted to turn around and come right back in, that was completely fine. The first day, she stood on her stoop for about 30 seconds, felt the cold morning air on her face, and went back inside. She kept her promise. The second day, she walked to the end of the block. The third day, she walked 2 blocks. By the end of the first week, she ran. Just a little, just to the corner. And here's the thing, she didn't run because she forced herself. She ran because she wanted to, because she was already out there, because the resistance had already been broken. 6 months later, Sarah ran her first 5K. 18 months later, she finished a half marathon in Central Park. And when people asked her how she did it, she always said the same thing. I didn't decide to become a runner. I just decided to walk outside. This is the truth that most motivational content completely misses. Big results don't come from big beginnings. They come from beginnings so small you almost don't notice them. Beginnings so light they don't trigger your brain's resistance system. Beginnings that slip past your defenses like a quiet visitor instead of crashing through the door demanding everything you have. And I want you to really sit with this for a moment, because I think there's something deeply kind about this idea. We've been taught for so long that change requires suffering, that if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't count, that we need to push ourselves to the limit, break through the pain, dominate our weaknesses. And maybe some of that has its place, but for most of us, in our normal lives, with our normal jobs and our normal stress, that mindset doesn't help us. It crushes us. It sets us up to feel like failures before we've even begun. What if the truth is gentler than that? What if real, lasting change doesn't come from breaking yourself, but from being so patient and so kind to yourself that your brain stops fighting you? What if discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do hard things, but about making the right things so easy that doing them becomes the path of least resistance? That's a radically different way of thinking about your own life. And I think it's a more honest one. Think about how a child learns to walk. We don't expect them to sprint on day one. We don't tell a 1-year-old, "You're being lazy. You should be running marathons by now." We celebrate every wobble, every step, every fall is just data, not failure. And somehow, without anyone forcing it, that child becomes a person who walks effortlessly for the rest of their life. The skill builds itself, layer by layer, through tiny repeated motions that nobody even thinks of as practice. We forget this when we grow up. We start treating ourselves like machines that should just be able to switch on full power. We get angry at ourselves for needing to ease into things. We mock the small starts as if they're beneath us. But the small starts are exactly what built every single skill we already have. You didn't learn to read by tackling a novel. You learned by recognizing one letter, then two, then a word, then a sentence, and one day, without noticing, you were reading. So here's what I want you to actually do, not just think about. Take whatever habit you've been struggling with, the one you keep starting and stopping, the one that makes you feel bad about yourself every time it comes up, and I want you to shrink it, not by half, not by a third. Shrink it until it feels almost laughable, until you can't possibly come up with a good excuse to skip it. Want to read more? Forget chapters. Forget 30 minutes. Read one page, just one, before bed. That's the whole habit. Want to start meditating? Forget 20-minute sessions. Sit on your couch and take 3 slow breaths. That's it. That's meditation for today. Want to write a book? Open the document and write 1 sentence. Want to eat healthier? Add 1 piece of fruit to your day. Not a complete diet overhaul. 1 apple, 1 handful of berries, 1 small choice. And I know what you're thinking right now. That's too small. That's not going to do anything. How is 1 page going to change my life? But that's exactly the voice that's been keeping you stuck. That's the voice of your old way of thinking, the way that's failed you over and over again, the voice that tells you to go big or go home, and then watches you go home empty-handed every single time. The truth is that 1 page will do something extraordinary, because tomorrow you'll read one page again, and the next day, and the next, and somewhere around day 20 or 30, something subtle will start to happen. The page will turn into 2 pages, then 5, then a chapter, not because you forced it, but because the habit has rooted itself. Your brain has stopped seeing reading as a task and started seeing it as just something you do, the way you brush your teeth or make coffee. And that quiet integration into your daily life is worth more than any motivational burst could ever buy you. There's a man named Marcus, a financial advisor in Chicago, who told me a story I'll never forget. He'd been trying to lose weight for almost a decade. He'd tried every program, every diet, every gym membership. He'd lose 10 pounds, gain 15 back, lose 20, gain 30. By the time he hit 40, he was the heaviest he'd ever been, and he was convinced something was just broken in him. Then one of his clients mentioned this idea of starting impossibly small. Marcus rolled his eyes at first, but he was tired of fighting himself. So he made one rule. He would walk for 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes around the block, right after lunch. He told nobody about it because it felt too embarrassing to share. 5 minutes? What was that going to do? But he did it every day, even when it was cold, even when he was busy. 5 minutes wasn't enough to negotiate with, so he just did it. After a month, 5 minutes became 10. After 3 months, 20. After 6 months, he was walking 45 minutes a day without thinking about it. After a year, he had lost 42 pounds. And here's the part that breaks my heart a little. When he told his friends, they thought he must have done some intense program, some boot camp, some extreme diet. He just smiled and said, I walked. I just walked. 5 minutes at a time. This is what almost nobody sees about consistent people. From the outside, their lives look impressive. They seem disciplined. They seem driven. They seem like they have some special quality the rest of us don't have. But if you got close enough, if you saw the actual daily reality of what they were doing, you'd realize something humbling. They weren't doing anything dramatic. They were doing small things, boring things. The same small, boring things over and over and over for years. That's the secret nobody wants to hear because it sounds too unsexy to be true. But it's the truth. It's always been the truth. And there's something else I want you to understand about starting small. It's not just a trick to get you moving. It's a deep statement about how you see yourself. Every time you set a goal that's too big and you fail, you're teaching yourself something. You're teaching yourself that you can't be trusted, that your promises to yourself don't mean much. Over time, that erodes something very precious. It erodes your self-respect. And without self-respect, no amount of motivation can save you, because deep down, you've already decided you're someone who doesn't follow through. But when you set a goal so small you can't fail at it, something completely different happens. Every day, you keep your word to yourself. Even if it's a tiny word, you said 2 push-ups, and you did 2 push-ups. You said 1 page, and you read 1 page. And brick by brick, day by day, you're rebuilding something that maybe got damaged a long time ago. You're rebuilding trust with yourself. You're slowly reminding yourself that when you say you're going to do something, you actually do it. And let me tell you, that quiet, internal rebuilding is worth more than any external result you could ever chase. So if you're tired, if you've started and stopped 100 times, If you're sitting there right now feeling like maybe you're just not the kind of person who can stick to things, I want you to hear me very clearly. You're not broken. You've just been swinging too hard. You've been trying to lift weights your mind isn't ready for, and every failure has made the next attempt harder. That's not a character flaw. That's just what happens when we ask too much of ourselves too soon. The way out isn't to push harder. The way out is to start smaller. So small, your brain doesn't even notice you're making a change. So small, you keep your promise every single day for a week, then 2 weeks, then a month. And one day, you'll look up and realize you've quietly become someone different. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped fighting yourself and started working with yourself instead. Take a moment right now. Think of the one habit you most want to build. Now shrink it. Make it embarrassingly small. Make it something so easy that future you, the one who's exhausted at the end of the day, the one who had a hard meeting at work, the one whose partner is sick or whose kids are crying, even that version of you can still do it. Because that's the version of you who needs to be able to keep the promise, not the inspired version on Sunday night, the tired version on Wednesday evening. That's where consistency actually lives, not in the peaks of motivation, in the valleys, in the small commitments you can keep even on your worst days. Build the habit at that level, and you'll never have to start over again. Lesson 2. Stop waiting for the mood to show up. Now, we have to talk about something that might be the single biggest lie your brain tells you every single day. And I mean every day. It's so quiet, so familiar, you probably don't even notice it anymore. It sounds something like this. I'll do it when I feel ready. I'll start when I'm in the right headspace. I'm just not in the mood today. Tomorrow, I'll have more energy. Let me wait until I feel inspired. Sound familiar? Of course it does. We've all said some version of this 1,000 times. And here's the thing, it doesn't feel like a lie when we say it. It feels like wisdom. It feels like we're being smart, waiting for the right conditions. Like we're protecting our work from being mediocre by holding out for the moment when we can really show up. But I want you to look at the last 5 years of your life and ask yourself something honest. How much have you actually accomplished while waiting for that moment? How many books didn't get written? How many businesses didn't get started? How many workouts got skipped? How many phone calls got delayed until the conversation became impossible? The truth that nobody wants to hear is this. The mood you're waiting for is never going to come the way you imagine it. Or rather, it will come occasionally. For about 15 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon when you're at work and can't do anything with it. And then it'll vanish for another 3 weeks. And in the meantime, life keeps moving. Time keeps passing. The version of you that wanted to change becomes the version of you that's 3 years older and still in the same place. That's the real cost of waiting for the mood. Not a missed workout, a missed life. Here's what I want you to understand about motivation. It's not the cause of action. It's the result of action. Read that again, because this is one of the most counterintuitive truths in all of human psychology. We've been raised on movies and stories where a hero feels something powerful, gets inspired, and then takes action. The music swells, the moment arrives, and the change happens. But real life doesn't work like that. In real life, the music doesn't swell. The moment doesn't arrive. You just have to start awkwardly and without ceremony, and then somewhere around 5 or 10 minutes in, the feeling shows up to join you. It doesn't lead. It follows. Think about the gym for a second. How many times have you sat on your couch at 6 in the evening, knowing you should go, feeling absolutely nothing that resembles motivation? Your body feels heavy. Your mind feels foggy. The thought of changing into workout clothes feels like climbing Everest. And in that moment, your brain whispers the lie. I'll go tomorrow, when I have more energy, when I'm in the mood. But sometimes, for reasons you can't even explain, you push past it. You stand up. You change. You drive to the gym. You walk in. And by the time you're 10 minutes into your workout, something has shifted. The fog is gone. The heaviness is gone. Suddenly, you feel alive. Suddenly, you can't believe you almost stayed home. That feeling, the one you were waiting for on the couch, was hiding inside the action the whole time. It was never going to come to you on the couch. It only shows up after you move. There's a woman named Emma I want to tell you about. She's a freelance illustrator in London, late 20s, deeply talented. For years, she'd been telling herself she was a creative person who worked best when inspired. She'd wait for the muse. She'd light the candle. She'd play the perfect playlist. She'd prepare her workspace just right. And then, more often than not, she'd realize the moment had passed, the muse hadn't come, and another day had gone by without making anything. She started to wonder if she was actually a real artist. Maybe she just talked about being one. Maybe she was a fraud who liked the idea of art more than the actual practice of it. Then one day, she met an older painter who'd been working professionally for 40 years. Emma asked him the question every young artist asks. How do you stay inspired? How do you keep the creative fire going? And he laughed. Not unkindly. He laughed the way a grandfather laughs at a small confusion. He said, "My dear, I haven't felt inspired in months. I just go to the studio every morning at 8. I paint until noon. Then I have lunch. Then I paint until 5. Sometimes the work is bad. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes, in the middle of a bad day, something wonderful happens. But I would never know that if I waited to feel inspired. Inspiration visits people who are already working." Emma told me that conversation changed her entire life. She started showing up to her studio every morning, whether she felt like it or not. The first few weeks were painful. The work felt forced. She hated half of what she made, but around the third week, something began to shift. She noticed that the ideas came more easily when she was already sketching. The frustration didn't stop her anymore because she'd promised herself only that she would show up, not that she would make masterpieces. And somewhere in month 3, she made her best work in years. Not on an inspired day, on a regular Tuesday, while the rain was coming down outside her window and she was halfway through a cup of coffee that had gone cold. This is what nobody tells you about discipline. The disciplined people aren't disciplined because they always feel like doing the thing. They're disciplined because they've learned that feelings are unreliable. They've stopped negotiating with their moods. They've stopped checking in with themselves to ask, "Do I feel like it?" Because they know that question is a trap. Asking yourself if you feel like doing a hard thing is almost always going to produce a no. So they don't ask. They just start. And the feeling either shows up to help them or it doesn't, but either way, the work gets done. I want you to think about all the things you do every day without checking your mood. You brush your teeth, you shower, you make your bed, you feed your kids, you answer your boss's email. You don't sit in front of the bathroom mirror at 7 in the morning asking yourself, am I in the mood to brush my teeth today? You just do it. It's part of who you are. It's part of how your day works. The action has been completely separated from the feeling, and that's exactly why it gets done so reliably. The habits we struggle with are the ones we still treat as optional, the ones we still negotiate with. The moment something becomes non-negotiable in your mind, the way brushing your teeth is non-negotiable, the mood stops mattering. There's a tenderness in this idea that I want you to feel, because I think we beat ourselves up so much for not feeling motivated. We think we're broken. We think real successful people must wake up with this incredible drive every day. They must love their work. They must be wired differently than the rest of us. But the truth is, most of the people who built remarkable lives feel just as tired, just as uninspired, just as overwhelmed as you do. The difference isn't that their feelings are better. The difference is they stopped letting their feelings make the final decisions. Imagine that. Imagine taking the steering wheel of your life away from a passenger who's exhausted, hungry, stressed, distracted, and easily bored, and putting it back in the hands of the actual driver, your values, your goals, your future self. That's what discipline really is. Not punishment, not force. It's just refusing to let your worst hour make decisions for your best hours. Try something tomorrow. Pick one habit you've been struggling with and make a tiny commitment to yourself. Tomorrow morning, before you check in with how you feel, you will do that thing. You won't ask permission from your mood. You won't poll your energy levels. You'll just start, even if it's only for 5 minutes, and then watch what happens. Watch how the resistance melts the moment you're already in motion. Watch how the version of you that was so sure she didn't want to do this becomes the version of you that's glad she did. That's the gift hidden inside this lesson. You don't need to change how you feel before you act. You change how you feel by acting. And let me say one more thing about this, because I think it matters. You don't have to feel good about your habit every single day to be doing it right. Some days will feel beautiful. Some days will feel like a chore. Some days you'll wonder if it's even worth it. That's normal. That's the texture of being human. The point isn't to manufacture joy every time you sit down to do the work. The point is to keep showing up, to keep the streak alive even when the streak feels boring. Because the people who quietly build lives they love aren't the ones who feel inspired every day. They're the ones who show up on the days when nothing feels inspired at all. Lesson 3. Make it so easy you'd feel silly not to do it. Now, I want to talk to you about something that might be the most overlooked piece of this entire puzzle. We spend so much time trying to change ourselves. We try to become more disciplined, more focused, more driven. We work on our mindset. We listen to motivational content. We try to develop willpower, like it's a muscle we can build at the gym. And there's some truth to all of that. But there's another truth, a quieter one, that's actually more powerful, and almost nobody talks about it. You will always lose the willpower battle eventually. Always. Not because you're weak, but because willpower is a finite resource that runs out as the day goes on. By the time you've handled a stressful meeting at work, dealt with traffic, answered 50 emails, and managed 3 difficult conversations, you do not have the mental energy left to fight your environment. So if you've set up your environment in a way that demands willpower at every turn, you're going to fail. Not eventually. Tonight. Right now. And then you'll wake up tomorrow and feel like a failure when really the system was rigged against you from the start. The good news is, once you understand this, you can rig the system the other way. You can design your environment so that the right choices become the easy choices, and the wrong choices require effort. You can stop relying on willpower entirely and start relying on the simple fact that human beings, all human beings, do what's easiest in any given moment. Your brain is constantly looking for the path of least resistance. So instead of fighting that, work with it. Make the path of least resistance lead toward the life you actually want. Let me give you a picture of what this looks like in practice. Imagine 2 people, both of whom want to start working out in the morning. The first person, let's call him David, lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in Berlin. His gym clothes are buried in the bottom drawer of his dresser. His running shoes are by the front door, but the laces are tangled. His water bottle is in the back of the kitchen cabinet behind a stack of plates. He doesn't know what workout he's going to do, so he tells himself he'll figure it out in the morning. His phone is plugged in next to his bed, full of social media apps that load instantly the moment he opens it. The second person, let's call him James, lives in a similar apartment a few miles away. Before he goes to bed, James lays out his workout clothes on the chair next to his bed. Shorts, t-shirt, socks, all ready to go. His running shoes are by the door with the laces already loosened so he can slip into them. His water bottle is filled and sitting on the kitchen counter where he can't miss it. He's written tomorrow's workout on a Post-it stuck to his bathroom mirror. His phone is in another room, charging on the kitchen counter far away from his bed. Now picture the 2 of them waking up at 6 in the morning. They're both equally tired. They both have the same job, the same stress, the same general level of motivation. Which one is going to work out? It's not even a fair fight. David is going to spend the first 10 minutes of his day trying to find his clothes, fighting tangled laces, opening his phone, getting sucked into a notification, and convincing himself it's actually a rest day. James is going to roll out of bed, see his clothes already laid out, slip them on without thinking, grab his water, and be moving before his brain has time to come up with an excuse. That's not willpower. That's design. That's the entire difference between a habit that survives and a habit that dies. James didn't become a better person than David overnight. He just stopped fighting his environment. He started using it as an ally instead of an enemy. And here's what's so freeing about this idea. It means you don't have to wait until you become a different person to start living a different life. You can change your environment today, right now, this afternoon. You don't need to fix yourself first. You just need to look around at the spaces you live in and ask one question. Are these spaces making it easier or harder for me to do what I actually want to do? Look at where you spend most of your time. Your bedroom, your kitchen, your desk, your phone, your couch. Every single one of these spaces is shaping your behavior in ways you're not even aware of. The chips on the counter are making it harder to eat well. The TV remote on the coffee table is making it easier to zone out for 3 hours after dinner. The phone next to your bed is destroying your sleep. The cluttered desk is making it almost impossible to focus on deep work. And none of this is because you're a bad person or a weak person. It's just that your environment is louder than your intentions, and right now, it's whispering all the wrong things to you. I want to tell you about Olivia, a teacher in Madrid who'd been struggling with her phone addiction for years. She knew it was a problem. She'd lost hours every day to mindless scrolling. She'd tried apps that limited screen time. She'd tried putting her phone face down. She'd tried sheer willpower. Nothing worked for more than a few days because at the end of every long day at school, she was too exhausted to fight herself. The phone was always within arm's reach, and her arm always reached for it. One weekend, she finally did something different. She didn't try to become more disciplined. She just bought a cheap kitchen timer and an old-fashioned alarm clock. Then she made a rule. Her phone would not be allowed in her bedroom anymore. Period. It would charge in the living room overnight. To get to it in the morning, she'd have to actually get out of bed and walk to another room. That sounds small, doesn't it? But here's what happened. The first night, she slept better than she had in years. The next morning, she got out of bed without checking her phone because it wasn't there. She made coffee. She actually read a book for 15 minutes. By the time she finally got to her phone, an hour had passed, and the urgency she usually felt to check it had disappeared. After a week, she barely thought about it. After a month, her mornings felt like they belonged to her again. She didn't break the phone addiction by becoming more disciplined. She broke it by moving the phone 6 meters away. This is the lesson. The friction is the lever. If you want to do more of something, reduce the friction around it. If you want to do less of something, increase the friction. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow every morning so you literally cannot avoid seeing it before bed. Want to eat healthier? Wash and cut your vegetables on Sunday and put them at eye level in the fridge. Want to scroll less? Charge your phone in a different room. Delete the app from your home screen so it takes 3 extra steps to open. Make the bad habit 20 seconds harder and watch how much it shrinks. There's something almost magical about how small these changes are. We expect transformation to require massive effort, massive discipline, massive willpower. But the people who quietly transform their lives are doing something much smaller. They're moving the chips off the counter. They're putting the running shoes by the door. They're putting the guitar on a stand in the living room instead of in the case in the closet. They're making the good choices the obvious ones. And they're letting their environment do the heavy lifting that their tired evening brain can't do. So tonight, before you go to bed, I want you to walk through your home with new eyes. Walk into your kitchen and ask, what habit is this room encouraging? Walk into your bedroom and ask, what is this space designed to make me do? Look at your desk. Look at your phone screen. Look at where things sit. Almost every habit you're trying to build or break is being silently influenced by the geography of your life. And the beautiful thing is, you have full power over that geography. You can rearrange it tonight. you can make the next 30 days 1,000 times easier than the last 30. Not by changing yourself, but by changing the spaces around you. The kindest gift you can give your future self is an environment that makes doing the right thing feel almost automatic. Lesson 4. Give the habit a home in your day. There's something I want you to notice about your own life. Look at the things you do every single day without thinking, without negotiating, without an internal debate. You wake up and probably reach for water. You shower at roughly the same time. You drink your coffee at roughly the same hour. You sit down at your desk somewhere around the same minute every morning. You eat lunch in a window of maybe 45 minutes. You go to bed in a relatively predictable rhythm. None of these things require motivation. None of them require willpower. They just happen because over years and years, they've quietly carved out a fixed place in your day. Your brain doesn't have to think about them anymore. They have a home. Now look at the habits you've been struggling with: the reading, the exercise, the writing, the meditation, the language learning, the journaling, the side project. I want you to ask yourself, where does that habit live in your day? At what specific time does it happen? In what location? Right after what other activity? And if your answer is something like, whenever I get a chance, or when I have time, or somewhere in the evening, that's exactly why it's not happening. You haven't given the habit a home. It's been wandering around your day looking for a place to land, and every other priority keeps pushing it out. This might be the most underrated lesson in all of habit building. Most people obsess over what they want to do. Almost nobody obsesses over when and where they're going to do it. And that single oversight is the reason so many beautiful intentions die quietly in the background of busy lives. It's not that you don't want it badly enough. It's that you haven't reserved a seat for it at the table of your day. And in a life as full as yours, anything that doesn't have a reserved seat is going to be standing in the corner forever, hoping someone notices it. Your brain loves patterns. It loves predictability. It loves knowing what comes next. This isn't a flaw. It's actually an incredible design feature of being human. When something becomes predictable, your brain stops spending energy on it and lets it run in the background. That's why your morning routine, whatever it looks like, doesn't drain you the way new things do. You don't wake up exhausted from the decisions of getting ready because there are no decisions. You're on autopilot, and autopilot is the most powerful tool you have for consistency. The question is whether you're going to consciously program your autopilot or just let it run whatever defaults you happen to absorb growing up. Think about the difference between two ways of approaching exercise. The first way, you tell yourself, I'm going to work out 4 times this week. That sounds like a plan, but it's actually not. It's a wish dressed up like a plan. Nowhere in that sentence is there a when. There's no where, there's no after what. So every day of the week, your brain has to make a new decision about exercise. Should I do it now? Should I do it later? Maybe after work? Maybe tomorrow? And every time your brain has to make a fresh decision, it has a fresh chance to say no. The second way, you tell yourself, I'm going to work out at 6:15 in the morning in my living room right after I drink a glass of water. Now, there's no decision left to make. There's no negotiation. There's just a time and a place that's been claimed. The habit has a home. This is what high-performing people figured out a long time ago, often without being able to articulate it. They stopped asking themselves when they were going to do important things. They decided once, they picked a slot, they claimed a corner of their day, and then they just kept showing up at that corner day after day until the corner became sacred, until missing it felt strange instead of normal, until the habit had grown root so deep in their schedule that nothing else could uproot it. There's a man named Henry, a software engineer in San Francisco, who told me about how he finally became a reader after 20 years of telling himself he wanted to read more. For 2 decades, he'd been buying books, stacking them on his nightstand, swearing he was going to get through them. And for 2 decades, he'd been failing. He'd start a book in February, get halfway through, put it down, and not pick it up again until November. Books kept piling up. Guilt kept piling up. He started to believe he just wasn't a reader anymore, even though some part of him knew that wasn't true. Then he did one thing differently. He decided that every night at 9:30, immediately after he brushed his teeth, he would sit in the chair by his bedroom window and read for 15 minutes. Not at night sometime, not before bed, 9:30, in the chair, after brushing his teeth. That was it. The rule was as specific as a doctor's appointment. The first week, it felt mechanical. He kept looking at the clock. The second week, something interesting happened. By 9:25, his body started moving toward the bathroom automatically. By 9:35, he was already in the chair, holding the book. After a month, he didn't even think about it anymore. He just brushed his teeth and walked to the chair. 3 years later, Henry had read 67 books. He told me, smiling, I didn't become more disciplined. I just put the habit somewhere it could survive. This is the secret. Habits that float don't last. Habits that anchor do. And the anchor isn't your intention. The anchor is a specific time, a specific place, and ideally, a specific behavior you already do reliably. The brushing of teeth becomes the trigger. The morning coffee becomes the trigger. The closing of the laptop at the end of the workday becomes the trigger. You're not creating a new habit out of thin air. You're attaching the new habit to something that's already rock solid in your life. I want you to think for a moment about how powerful this is. You already have an entire scaffolding of unconscious behaviors running through your day. Dozens of them. They happen whether you decide them or not. You wake up, you reach for your phone, you walk into the kitchen, you turn on the kettle, you sit in your car, you check the time. These tiny moments are exactly the doorways through which new habits can enter your life without resistance. All you have to do is choose one and attach the new behavior to it. After I pour my morning coffee, I will write one sentence in my journal. After I sit down at my desk, I will write down the 3 most important things I want to do today. After I close my laptop at 6, I will walk for 10 minutes. After I get into bed, I will read 2 pages. Notice how different that feels from a vague intention. There's something almost relieving about the specificity. Your brain doesn't have to manage the decision anymore. It already knows the rule. It already knows the moment. And once you've done it a few weeks in a row, you stop having to remember it all. The trigger triggers the action. The action becomes the trigger for the next action. And little by little, an entire chain of meaningful behavior gets stitched into the fabric of your day without you having to fight for it every single time. There's something deeply comforting about giving your habits a home. It takes them off the worry list. They stop being these things you have to remember to do, things you have to feel guilty about not doing. They just become parts of your day, the way lunch is part of your day. You don't agonize over whether you're going to eat lunch tomorrow. You know you will. You don't know exactly what or where, but you know lunch is happening. That same calm certainty can apply to your reading, your exercise, your writing, your meditation, your time with the people you love. It just needs a home. And let me say something tender here. If you've been struggling with consistency for a long time, this lesson is not a criticism. It's a kindness. You don't need to try harder. You don't need to want it more. You just need to give your good intentions a place to live. Right now, they're homeless inside your day, competing with everything else for attention. Move them into a specific time. Anchor them to something already stable. And watch how much lighter the whole thing becomes. You'll stop having to drag yourself toward the habit. The habit will start meeting you halfway, at the same place, at the same time, every single day. That's not discipline. That's design, doing the work for you. Lesson 5. Stop thinking about forever. Just get through today. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that happens before you've even started something. You know the feeling. You decide you want to make a change. You picture it. You start to plan. And then, somewhere in the planning, your brain takes a left turn into the future. Suddenly, you're not thinking about today's workout. You're thinking about doing this every day for the next year. You're thinking about holidays and bad weeks and tired days and travel and the family wedding in August and the work crisis that always comes up in November. You're trying to mentally pre-live an entire year of consistency in a single afternoon. And by the time you snap back to the present, you're already drained. You haven't done anything yet, and you're already tired. This is one of the cruelest tricks the mind plays on us. It takes a single, simple, doable action, like writing for 30 minutes, and it expands it into an enormous mental commitment. 365 days of writing, 26 weeks of waking up early, 12 months of saying no to the cookies. And under the weight of that future, the present action collapses. Because no human brain can actually handle the idea of doing something hard every day forever. Even the toughest, most disciplined people in the world don't think that way. They've trained themselves out of it. They've learned that the future is not where consistency lives. Today is. I want you to really pause on this, because I think it's where so many of us are quietly losing the battle, not on the field, not in the action itself, but in our imagination, where we keep loading up our shoulders with weights that don't actually exist yet. You're not asked to be consistent for a year. You're not asked to be consistent for a month. You're not even asked to be consistent for a week. You're asked to be consistent today. That's it. That's the only commitment that's actually real right now. Everything else is fiction your brain is generating to scare you out of starting. Think about how people climb mountains. Real mountains. Not metaphorical ones. The climbers who actually make it to the top don't stand at the base camp staring up at the peak the whole time. If they did, they'd be paralyzed. They'd be crushed by how impossibly far away the top looks. So instead, they focus on the next step, the next handhold, the next 20 meters. They don't pretend the peak isn't there, but they don't let it run their inner experience either. They just keep their attention on the very next move. And step by step, almost without noticing, they end up somewhere they couldn't have imagined when they started. Your life is the same way. The big goals you want, the better health, the better career, the better relationships, the more peaceful mind, they all live at the top of a mountain. And you cannot get there by staring at the top. You can only get there by doing today's section. Just today. Not because tomorrow doesn't matter, but because tomorrow isn't yours yet. Tomorrow doesn't need your willpower right now. Tomorrow doesn't need your strategy. Tomorrow doesn't need your worry. Today does. And today is the only place where you can actually do anything. I want to tell you about a woman named Claire. She's in her late 30s, lives in Vancouver, and a few years ago, she decided she wanted to get sober. She'd been drinking a bottle of wine a night for years, quietly, not in some dramatic way, just a steady, slow erosion of her energy, her sleep, her relationships. She'd tried to quit several times. Every single attempt failed within a few weeks. And she told me the reason was always the same. She would lie in bed on her first sober night, and her mind would whisper, "You have to do this for the rest of your life, forever. No more wine at dinner, no more drinks at weddings, no more glass on a Friday night when the week has been hard." And the weight of forever would crush her. By night 3 or 4, she'd be back to her old patterns. Then one day, she heard someone in a recovery meeting say something simple. Just today. Don't drink today. Tomorrow is tomorrow's problem. Claire said it felt almost too easy, but she tried it. That night, she didn't promise herself she'd never drink again. She just promised herself she wouldn't drink today. When the urge came at 6 in the evening, she said to herself, "Not today. Maybe tomorrow, but not today." And she got through the evening. The next morning, she said the same thing. "Not today. Maybe tomorrow, but not today." She did this for one day, then another, then another. 3 years later, she still hasn't had a drink. But here's what she told me. "I never quit forever. I just kept choosing today. Forever was too big for me. Today was something I could handle." This is the truth of every long, hard, beautiful journey. It's never really a journey of years. It's a journey of days. Just today, repeated many times. The mistake we make is trying to live all those days at once in our heads. We try to feel motivated for the next 12 months in a single afternoon. We try to feel committed to a goal that hasn't even unfolded yet. And then we wonder why we feel overwhelmed. We're not overwhelmed by reality. We're overwhelmed by our imagination of reality. There's a big difference. Bring your attention back to today. What does today actually ask of you? Probably something pretty small. 20 minutes of movement, one healthy meal, a few pages read, a short conversation with someone you love, one genuine effort on the project that matters to you. That's not too much. That's not impossible. That's not even particularly hard on its own. The hard part is letting tomorrow stay where it belongs, in the future, and not dragging it into the present to weigh you down before you've even begun. There's a kind of freedom in this idea that I want you to feel. You don't have to figure out the rest of your life right now. You don't have to know how the story ends. You don't have to be sure you can sustain this forever. You just have to do one good thing today. And then, when tomorrow becomes today, you do one good thing again, and the day after that, again. And little by little, without trying to engineer the whole future, you become someone whose days are full of small good things. And a life full of days like that, well, that's just what we call a good life, isn't it? Built quietly, one day at a time, with no grand commitment to forever, just a steady, gentle, repeated yes to today. So tonight, when your brain starts trying to make you tired about the future, gently pull it back. Whisper to yourself the way Claire did, not today, just today. Today, I'll write for 10 minutes. Today, I'll go for a walk. Today, I'll be kind to my body. Today, I'll show up. Tomorrow doesn't need anything from me yet. Today is the only place I can actually live. And in this one small day, I get to choose. I get to choose, again, the kind of person I'm becoming. Lesson 6. When you fall, don't stay down. I want to talk about something that almost nobody talks about honestly. We hear so much about how to start habits, how to build them, how to keep them going. But almost no one tells you the truth about what's going to happen along the way. So let me just say it plainly. You're going to mess up. Not maybe, not occasionally. You are going to mess up. You're going to miss days. You're going to break streaks you swore you'd never break. You're going to wake up some Tuesday morning and realize you haven't done the thing for a week and you don't even remember when you stopped. This will happen. It happens to everyone. It happened to every single person you admire. And the question is not whether you'll slip. The question is what you'll do in the hours and days that come right after. This is where most people lose the entire game. Not at the beginning, not in the middle, right here, at this exact moment. The slip itself almost never destroys the habit. The reaction to the slip is what destroys it. And the reaction is almost always the same. You miss a day, and a quiet little voice inside you whispers something cruel. See? I knew it. I knew you couldn't do it. You always do this. You always quit. You're never going to change. And under the weight of that voice, the second day off becomes easier than the first. The third becomes easier than the second. By the end of a week, you've stopped entirely, not because the habit was too hard, but because you couldn't bear the shame of starting over. I want you to really hear me on this, because I think it's one of the most important things I can tell you. The slip is not the problem. The story you tell yourself about the slip is the problem. One missed day is a missed day. That's all it is. It's a small piece of statistical noise in a long life. It doesn't mean anything about who you are. It doesn't predict your future. It doesn't define your character. But the moment you decide it does, the moment you let it become evidence in a courtroom case against yourself, that's when it actually starts to matter. Because now you're not just missing a day. You're confirming a belief, and beliefs are what shape behavior over the long run far more than any single action ever could. There's something almost cruel about how we treat ourselves when we fall short. We would never speak to a friend the way we speak to ourselves. If a friend told us they'd missed 3 workouts in a row, we wouldn't say, well, that's it. You're done. You're a failure. You'll never be fit. We'd say, hey, it's okay. Life happens. Let's just get back to it tomorrow. We'd be warm. We'd be patient. We'd remind them that one bad week doesn't erase the months of effort that came before. And yet, when it's us, we become the harshest judge we know. We pull out the gavel. We deliver the verdict before any evidence has even been heard. What if you tried something different? What if, the next time you slipped, you actually spoke to yourself the way you'd speak to a friend? What if you said gently, "Hey, that was a hard day or a hard week. It's okay. You're still here. Tomorrow we'll just start again." Not because you've earned forgiveness, just because you're a person, and people stumble, and stumbling doesn't take you out of the game unless you decide it does. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. He's a 42-year-old father of two who lives in Boston. For 3 years, he'd been trying to build a meditation practice. He'd tried apps. He'd tried courses. He'd tried sitting in the basement at 5 in the morning with candles, and every time he'd do beautifully for 2 or 3 weeks, miss a day, and then collapse into a month-long break. He told me he must have started and quit meditation 40 times in those 3 years. He was starting to believe he just wasn't built for it. Then a therapist he was seeing said something that changed everything for him. She said, "Thomas, your problem isn't the meditation. Your problem is that you treat one missed day like a death sentence. You're not failing because you miss. You're failing because you can't come back." So she gave him one simple rule: never miss twice. Miss as many times as you need to. But the day after a miss, you sit down and meditate, even for 1 minute. The streak doesn't matter. The recovery matters. Thomas told me that the first week he tried this rule, he missed a Tuesday, and he felt that familiar wave of shame. The old story started up. "See, you did it again. You can't even do this." But this time, he had a different rule. Just don't miss twice. So on Wednesday morning, he sat down for 1 minute. Just one. And then he went about his day. And the strangest thing happened. He didn't feel like a failure. He felt like someone who had stumbled and gotten back up, which is a completely different identity than someone who stumbled and stayed down. 2 years later, Thomas meditates every single day. Not because he never misses. He misses sometimes. But he comes back. And the coming back is what has built the habit, not the unbroken streak he used to obsess over. This is the heart of it. The unbroken streak is a beautiful idea, but it's also a fragile one. It only takes one bad day to shatter, and once it's shattered, the temptation to give up entirely becomes almost overwhelming. So you build a habit on a structure that's destined to break, and then you wonder why nothing lasts. The unbroken streak is the wrong measure of success. The fast recovery is the right one. The people who quietly build remarkable lives over years and decades are not the people who never miss. They're the people who never miss twice. They've made peace with imperfection. They've learned that the goal was never perfection in the first place. The goal was continuity, and continuity survives missed days. It does not survive missed weeks. There's something deeply freeing about this idea. It takes the pressure off in exactly the right place. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be unbroken. You don't have to never miss. You just have to come back, quickly, quietly, without making a big drama out of it. The next day, you sit down again. The next morning, you put on the running shoes again. The next evening, you open the book again. No ceremony, no guilt, no need to apologize to yourself or anyone else. Just a soft, simple return, as if you'd never left. because the truth is, in any meaningful way, you hadn't. Think about how nature handles this. A tree doesn't stop growing because there's a bad winter. It doesn't tell itself, well, I missed an entire season, might as well give up entirely. It just waits, conserves its energy, and then in the spring, it starts growing again. There's no shame. There's no internal monologue about what kind of tree it is or isn't. It just resumes. It returns to the work of being a tree. And over decades, those small returns add up to something enormous, to a tall, strong, beautiful thing that has weathered hundreds of bad weeks and is still standing. That tree is not the version of you that never struggled. That tree is the version of you that came back every spring, no matter how rough the winter was. So, I want you to make a quiet agreement with yourself right now. The next time you slip, and there will be a next time, you're not going to make it into a big story. You're not going to call yourself names. You're not going to spiral. You're just going to say, okay, that was yesterday. Today, I come back, and then you'll come back. Maybe smaller than before, maybe just 2 minutes of the thing instead of 20. That's fine. The size doesn't matter. The return matters. The unbroken thing you're actually trying to build is not a streak of days. It's a streak of returns. Every time you fall and get up, that streak gets stronger, not weaker. Every comeback is a deposit into the bank account of who you're becoming. And that bank account, the one full of comebacks, is where real, durable consistency actually lives. Lesson 7. Let your eyes see what your effort is building. Here's something strange about human beings that almost nobody warns you about. We are very, very bad at noticing slow change, especially in ourselves. You can be doing something every single day for 2 months, making real measurable progress, and your brain will look in the mirror or check in with itself and say, nothing's happening. I look the same. I feel the same. This isn't working. And under the weight of that feeling, that completely inaccurate feeling, you'll quit. You'll quit something that was working just because you couldn't see it working. This is one of the saddest losses I see again and again in people's lives. They quit just before the change becomes visible. They quit because they trusted a feeling more than they trusted the math of what they were actually doing. And it's not their fault. It's how our brains are wired. We're built to notice sudden change, not slow change. A loud noise, a flashing light, a sudden movement, those get our attention. But a slow accumulation of small improvements, the kind that's actually building your real life, that just slides under the radar. It happens so gradually that you literally cannot perceive it from the inside. This is exactly why making your progress visible is not a nice to have. It's a survival tool. Without some kind of external evidence that you're actually moving forward, your internal experience will eventually convince you that you're not. And in that moment, you'll make a decision that doesn't match reality. You'll quit something that was working. You'll abandon a path right before it would have taken you somewhere remarkable. The good news is, you don't need anything fancy to fix this. You don't need an app. You don't need a complicated tracking system. You don't need to hire someone. You just need some simple, visual, undeniable way of seeing the work you've done. A calendar on the wall with an X for every day you showed up. A small notebook where you write the date and one sentence about what you did. A jar where you drop in a marble for every workout, watching it slowly fill up over the months. Whatever feels right for you. The form doesn't matter much. The function matters everything. Because here's what happens when you can see your work. Something changes inside you. On the days you feel like quitting, when that little voice whispers nothing is happening, you look at the wall. You look at the page. You look at the jar. And the evidence is right there. 23 X's in a row, 47 journal entries, 89 marbles. You can argue with your feelings, but you can't argue with that. The proof has a quiet authority that no internal complaint can override, and in that small moment, the urge to quit loses its power. Because the proof says, you are doing this, you have been doing this, and every X on that calendar is a deposit you've made in a future you can't see yet. I want to tell you about a woman named Margaret who works as a financial planner in Toronto. For most of her adult life, she'd been telling herself she wanted to write a novel. She had ideas. She had characters in her head. But every time she tried, she'd write for a week or two and then give up because, in her words, it just felt like nothing was happening. The novel wasn't getting written. She didn't feel like a writer. The whole thing seemed pointless. Then she did something almost embarrassingly simple. She bought a year-long wall calendar and hung it next to her desk. And she made a rule. Every day she wrote at least 300 words. She got to put a green sticker on that day. That was it. The whole system. 300 words. Green sticker. The first week, she had 4 green stickers. The second week, 6. By the end of the first month, she could see something extraordinary. A wall full of green dots. Most of November lit up. Most of December lit up. Even on the days she didn't feel like a writer, even on the days her work felt terrible, the wall told her a different story. The wall said, "You are a writer. You wrote yesterday. You wrote the day before. You've written almost every day for 2 months." Margaret finished her first novel in 14 months. Then she wrote another one in 9. She told me the writing didn't get easier. What got easier was the believing. Because every time my brain told me I wasn't really doing this, I'd look at that wall and the wall would say, "Yes, you are." And eventually, I believed the wall. This is what visible progress actually does. It rewires the story you're telling yourself about who you are. Because identity is not built on intentions. Identity is built on evidence. And without evidence, your identity will drift toward whatever your worst day tells you. With evidence, your identity starts to anchor itself to your actual track record. You stop being someone who's trying to be consistent. You start being someone who is consistent because the wall says so, because the page says so, because the count says so. And once your identity shifts, your behavior follows, not the other way around. There's another thing that happens when you can see your progress, and it's something I really want you to understand. The streak itself becomes a quiet motivator. After 15 X's in a row on the calendar, you genuinely don't want to break it. Not because you're obsessed, not because you're rigid, but because something inside you has started caring about the visual line. You've created a small, real thing in the world, and you want to keep it alive. This isn't a trick. This is just how human beings work. We protect what we can see. We get attached to what we can count. And that attachment becomes one more force pulling you back to the habit, even on days when motivation and mood have abandoned you entirely. But here's the warning I have to give you. Progress tracking is not about pressure. It's not about beating yourself up when the X is missing. It's about giving yourself proof on the days when you need proof. If you turn it into another way to punish yourself, it'll backfire. The wall isn't there to shame you for the days you missed. The wall is there to celebrate the days you showed up. Some days will be missing. That's fine. Look at the days that are there. That's the whole point. The X's that exist are real, and they belong to you. They're yours. Nobody can take them back, and the longer you go, the harder it becomes for any voice inside you to convince you that you're not the kind of person who follows through. I want you to try this week. Pick one habit, just one, that you're trying to build. And tonight, before you go to bed, set up some small way to track it. A piece of paper on the wall, a note on your phone, a jar with marbles or coins, whatever's easy. And then tomorrow, when you do the thing, even if it's tiny, mark it. And then do that every day for a week. By the end of the week, you'll have a small but undeniable piece of evidence sitting somewhere in your house. Look at it. Really look at it. Notice how it feels. Notice the quiet pride that starts to grow. Notice how much harder it becomes to quit when you can see the work you've already done. Because here's the truth that almost nobody tells you. The hard part of consistency is not the doing. The hard part is the believing. Believing that what you're doing matters, even when you can't see the results yet. Believing that the slow accumulation will turn into something visible eventually. Believing that today's effort isn't being wasted, even though today's effort doesn't feel like much on its own. And the easiest way to keep believing is to keep seeing, to keep the proof in front of your eyes, because your eyes are easier to convince than your feelings. And once your eyes are convinced, your feelings will catch up. Eventually, quietly, without you even noticing exactly when. One ordinary morning, you'll wake up and you'll just be someone who does this thing. Because the wall said so for so long that even you believed it. Lesson 8. Wrap the boring stuff in something you love. Let me ask you something honest. When you think about the habits you're trying to build, the workouts, the reading, the writing, the cleaning, the studying, the saving, the meditating, how do they feel? Be honest with yourself. Most of them probably feel like work, like obligations, like things you should do, would do, want to do, but somehow keep avoiding. And meanwhile, look at the things you actually do every day without trying. Scrolling through your phone, watching shows, eating snacks while you watch shows, listening to music, chatting with friends. Notice the pattern. The things you do effortlessly are the things that bring pleasure. The things you struggle with are the things that don't. This isn't a moral failing. This isn't a sign that you're a weak person who only chases easy pleasures. This is just how your brain is built. Your brain is essentially a pleasure-seeking, pain-avoiding machine. It's been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years, long before there were Pelotons and reading lists and self-improvement podcasts. Every time you do something that feels good, your brain releases a tiny chemical reward and learns, do that again. Every time you do something that feels boring or painful, your brain quietly logs it as something to avoid. And then we wonder why we keep choosing the show over the workout. We're not choosing it. Our biology is choosing it for us every single time, unless we set things up differently. This is where so many of us go wrong. We assume that if a habit is good for us, we should be able to do it without making it enjoyable. We treat enjoyment like it's some kind of cheating, like the people who really have discipline don't need their habits to feel good. They just grit their teeth and push through. But that's not actually how high-performing people work. The ones who sustain habits over decades, not weeks, have figured out something crucial. They've stopped trying to override their brain's pleasure-seeking nature, and they've started using it. They've made their good habits genuinely enjoyable. Not endured, enjoyed. And that one shift changes everything. Here's what I mean. Imagine two different people who both want to start walking every morning. The first person, let's call him Daniel, treats it like a duty. He sets his alarm. He drags himself out of bed. He walks in the silence around his neighborhood in Amsterdam, thinking about everything he has to do that day, feeling cold, feeling tired, feeling like he's being punished. By day 6, he's negotiating with himself. By day 12, he's quit. He tells himself he just doesn't have the discipline for morning walks. But what really happened is he set up an activity that gave his brain zero pleasure, and his brain did exactly what it was designed to do. It started looking for an exit. Now imagine Rachel. She lives in a similar neighborhood, same goal, same alarm. But Rachel has done one thing differently. She has a podcast she's absolutely in love with, a series about hidden histories, voices, and stories that make her feel like she's traveling somewhere even while she's just walking down her own street. She's made one rule for herself. She's only allowed to listen to this podcast when she's walking. Not in the car, not on the couch, only on her morning walks. The first morning, she's not really thinking about the walk. She's thinking about the next episode. She's curious about what's going to happen. She actually wants to step outside, because stepping outside is the only way she gets to find out. 3 months later, Rachel is walking every morning without thinking twice about it. And here's the part she hadn't expected. The walks themselves have started to feel wonderful. She's noticing the light. She's noticing the seasons. The podcast brought her to the walk, but the walk has become its own reward. This is the lesson hidden inside this whole idea. You don't have to wait until you naturally love the habit. You can borrow love from something else and let it carry you through the door. And once you're inside the door, the habit itself starts to grow its own quiet kind of pleasure. It just needs the chance to do that. And most of us never give it the chance because we've made the entry so unpleasant that we never make it past the first week. There's a name for this in the psychology world, but I don't want to get clinical about it. I just want you to feel the simple wisdom of it. You take something you have to do, and you wrap it inside something you want to do. The folding of laundry happens while you watch your favorite show. The boring treadmill session happens while you listen to that audiobook you've been dying to get back to. The slow cooking of a healthy meal happens while you have a long phone call with your sister who lives across the country. The studying happens at your favorite coffee shop with the latte you don't let yourself have anywhere else. You're not lowering the standard. You're not avoiding the work. You're just refusing to fight your own biology. You're letting the pleasant thing pull the necessary thing along behind it. Think about how much of your life this could quietly transform. Almost every habit you're struggling with right now could probably be paired with something you'd actually look forward to. The treadmill paired with a show you can only watch while running. The morning journal paired with the cappuccino you make ceremoniously, just for that quiet moment. The phone call to your mother paired with your evening walk. So you're never just stuck on the couch trying to remember to call. The slow, boring stretching paired with a playlist that genuinely moves you. You're not bribing yourself like a child. You're being kind to yourself like a wise adult who understands what it actually takes to keep going. I want to tell you about a man named Lucas who lives in Lisbon. He works as an architect, which sounds creative but mostly involves long hours on computer-aided design programs that drain him by 6 in the evening. For years, he'd been telling himself he needed to exercise. He'd buy gym memberships, use them twice, and let them lapse. He'd try home workouts and stop within a week. He'd run once and not run again for 2 months. He genuinely thought there was something wrong with him. He believed deep down that he was just not the kind of person who could exercise consistently. Then one summer, on a trip to visit his brother in Madrid, something happened. His brother had recently gotten really into cycling, and he convinced Lucas to come on one ride, just one. Lucas agreed reluctantly, but his brother had paired the ride with something Lucas couldn't resist. They were going to ride out of the city, into the hills, and end at a small restaurant his brother had been hearing about. A restaurant with food so good people drove for hours to eat there. So the ride wasn't really a ride. The ride was the price of admission to the meal. Lesson 6. When you fall, don't stay down. I want to talk about something that almost nobody talks about honestly. We hear so much about how to start habits, how to build them, how to keep them going. But almost no one tells you the truth about what's going to happen along the way. So let me just say it plainly. You're going to mess up. Not maybe, not occasionally. You are going to mess up. You're going to miss days. You're going to break streaks you swore you'd never break. You're going to wake up some Tuesday morning and realize you haven't done the thing for a week and you don't even remember when you stopped. This will happen. It happens to everyone. It happened to every single person you admire. And the question is not whether you'll slip. The question is what you'll do in the hours and days that come right after. This is where most people lose the entire game. Not at the beginning, not in the middle, right here, at this exact moment. The slip itself almost never destroys the habit. The reaction to the slip is what destroys it. And the reaction is almost always the same. You miss a day, and a quiet little voice inside you whispers something cruel. See? I knew it. I knew you couldn't do it. You always do this. You always quit. You're never going to change. And under the weight of that voice, the second day off becomes easier than the first. The third becomes easier than the second. By the end of a week, you've stopped entirely, not because the habit was too hard, but because you couldn't bear the shame of starting over. I want you to really hear me on this, because I think it's one of the most important things I can tell you. The slip is not the problem. The story you tell yourself about the slip is the problem. One missed day is a missed day. That's all it is. It's a small piece of statistical noise in a long life. It doesn't mean anything about who you are. It doesn't predict your future. It doesn't define your character. But the moment you decide it does, the moment you let it become evidence in a courtroom case against yourself, that's when it actually starts to matter. Because now you're not just missing a day, you're confirming a belief. And beliefs are what shape behavior over the long run far more than any single action ever could. There's something almost cruel about how we treat ourselves when we fall short. We would never speak to a friend the way we speak to ourselves. If a friend told us they'd missed 3 workouts in a row, we wouldn't say, "Well, that's it. You're done. You're a failure. You'll never be fit." We'd say, "Hey, it's okay. Life happens. Let's just get back to it tomorrow." We'd be warm. We'd be patient. We'd remind them that one bad week doesn't erase the months of effort that came before. And yet, when it's us, we become the harshest judge we know. We pull out the gavel. We deliver the verdict before any evidence has even been heard. What if you tried something different? What if, the next time you slipped, you actually spoke to yourself the way you'd speak to a friend? What if you said gently, "Hey, that was a hard day or a hard week. It's okay. You're still here. Tomorrow we'll just start again." Not because you've earned forgiveness, just because you're a person, and people stumble, and stumbling doesn't take you out of the game unless you decide it does. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. He's a 42-year-old father of 2 who lives in Boston. For 3 years, he'd been trying to build a meditation practice. He'd tried apps. He'd tried courses. He'd tried sitting in the basement at 5 in the morning with candles, and every time he'd do beautifully for 2 or 3 weeks, miss a day, and then collapse into a month-long break. He told me he must have started and quit meditation 40 times in those 3 years. He was starting to believe he just wasn't built for it. Then a therapist he was seeing said something that changed everything for him. She said, "Thomas, your problem isn't the meditation. Your problem is that you treat one missed day like a death sentence. You're not failing because you miss. You're failing because you can't come back." So she gave him one simple rule: never miss twice. Miss as many times as you need to. But the day after a miss, you sit down and meditate, even for 1 minute. The streak doesn't matter. The recovery matters. Thomas told me that the first week he tried this rule, he missed a Tuesday, and he felt that familiar wave of shame. The old story started up. "See, you did it again. You can't even do this." But this time, he had a different rule. Just don't miss twice. So on Wednesday morning, he sat down for 1 minute. Just one. And then he went about his day. And the strangest thing happened. He didn't feel like a failure. He felt like someone who had stumbled and gotten back up, which is a completely different identity than someone who stumbled and stayed down. 2 years later, Thomas meditates every single day. Not because he never misses. He misses sometimes. But he comes back. And the coming back is what has built the habit, not the unbroken streak he used to obsess over. This is the heart of it. The unbroken streak is a beautiful idea, but it's also a fragile one. It only takes one bad day to shatter, and once it's shattered, the temptation to give up entirely becomes almost overwhelming. So you build a habit on a structure that's destined to break, and then you wonder why nothing lasts. The unbroken streak is the wrong measure of success. The fast recovery is the right one. The people who quietly build remarkable lives over years and decades are not the people who never miss. They're the people who never miss twice. They've made peace with imperfection. They've learned that the goal was never perfection in the first place. The goal was continuity, and continuity survives missed days. It does not survive missed weeks. There's something deeply freeing about this idea. It takes the pressure off in exactly the right place. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be unbroken. You don't have to never miss. You just have to come back, quickly, quietly, without making a big drama out of it. The next day, you sit down again. The next morning, you put on the running shoes again. The next evening, you open the book again. No ceremony, no guilt, no need to apologize to yourself or anyone else. Just a soft, simple return, as if you'd never left. Because the truth is, in any meaningful way, you hadn't. Think about how nature handles this. A tree doesn't stop growing because there's a bad winter. It doesn't tell itself, well, I missed an entire season, might as well give up entirely. It just waits, conserves its energy, and then in the spring, it starts growing again. There's no shame. There's no internal monologue about what kind of tree it is or isn't. It just resumes. It returns to the work of being a tree. And over decades, those small returns add up to something enormous, to a tall, strong, beautiful thing that has weathered hundreds of bad weeks and is still standing. That tree is not the version of you that never struggled. That tree is the version of you that came back every spring, no matter how rough the winter was. So, I want you to make a quiet agreement with yourself right now. The next time you slip, and there will be a next time, you're not going to make it into a big story. You're not going to call yourself names. You're not going to spiral. You're just going to say, okay, that was yesterday. Today, I come back, and then you'll come back. Maybe smaller than before, maybe just 2 minutes of the thing instead of 20. That's fine. The size doesn't matter. The return matters. The unbroken thing you're actually trying to build is not a streak of days. It's a streak of returns. Every time you fall and get up, that streak gets stronger, not weaker. Every comeback is a deposit into the bank account of who you're becoming. And that bank account, the one full of comebacks, is where real, durable consistency actually lives, bringing it all together, the life you're actually building. So here we are. We've walked through 8 lessons together, and if you stayed with me this whole way, I want you to take a slow breath before we go any further. Because something has happened in the last hour or so that you might not have noticed. You've just been consistent. You sat down. You stayed. You listened. You let an idea unfold over a long stretch of time, even when other things were probably pulling at your attention. That's not a small thing. That's exactly the muscle we've been talking about this whole conversation. You've already been using it. You're already capable of it. You just needed someone to point it out. Let's take stock of where we've been, but not as a list of rules to memorize, as a quiet picture of the kind of life we're slowly painting together. We started by understanding that the real enemy isn't laziness. It's the size of what we're trying to do. We make our beginnings too big, our brains panic, and we never get started. The way out isn't to push harder. The way out is to shrink the entry until it's impossible to refuse. 2 push-ups, 1 page, 5 minutes. Whatever's so small, It slides past every excuse your mind can manufacture. That was the first piece. Then we talked about the lie of waiting for the mood, the lie that we'll do it when we feel like it, the lie that motivation is something that arrives before action, when really it arrives because of action. The lie that there's a magical version of you out there who will one day feel ready, when really the only version of you that actually exists is the one sitting where you're sitting right now. And that version has everything she needs to start. We stopped negotiating with our feelings and we promised to act first, knowing the feelings would follow. After that, we walked into our own environments with new eyes. We stopped trying to change ourselves through sheer willpower and started reshaping the spaces around us so the right choices became the easy choices. We moved the phone out of the bedroom. We laid the workout clothes by the bed. We put the book on the pillow and the chips out of sight. We let our environments do the heavy lifting that our exhausted evening selves couldn't manage. We finally understood that we're not weak. We were just trying to build good habits in spaces that were quietly working against us. Then we gave our habits a home. We stopped letting them float through our days like uninvited guests. We anchored them to a specific time, to a specific place, to a specific behavior that was already automatic. The morning coffee became the trigger for the journal. The closing of the laptop became the trigger for the walk. The brushing of teeth became the trigger for the reading. And slowly, without us forcing it, the brain learned the pattern. The habit stopped being something we had to remember and started being something that just happened, the way every other reliable part of our day already happens. From there, we pulled our minds back from the future. We stopped trying to live a year of consistency in a single afternoon. We stopped piling up imaginary weight on our shoulders that didn't actually exist yet. We learned to say, not forever, just today, just this morning, just this next hour. Because today is the only place where we can actually do anything, and the people who quietly build great lives are simply people who got really good at doing one good thing today again and again for years. Then we made peace with imperfection. We stopped believing that one missed day was the end of everything. We made the quiet, firm agreement with ourselves to never miss twice. Not never miss twice. We separated the slip from the story. We learned that the slip is just statistical noise, and the story we tell about the slip is what either keeps us in the game or pushes us out of it. We chose gently to keep returning. Because the streak we were really building was never a streak of unbroken days. It was a streak of comebacks. We made our work visible. We put up the wall calendar. We marked the days. We let our eyes see what our feelings couldn't yet trust. Because believing in slow change is one of the hardest things a human being can do, and we needed evidence, real, undeniable evidence, the kind that lives outside our heads, on a wall, in a notebook, in a jar slowly filling up, so that on the dark days when our minds whispered nothing is working, we could look at the proof and say, actually, something is. Look, there it is. And finally, we stopped fighting our own biology. We stopped pretending we should be machines that don't need pleasure. We started wrapping the boring, necessary things inside the things we actually loved. The audiobook only for the walk, the pastry only for the bike ride, the favorite cup only for the morning writing. We made friends with our own delight, and we let delight quietly carry us through doors that willpower could never have opened on its own. 8 lessons, each one a small key, each one solving a piece of the puzzle that's probably been frustrating you for years. But here's what I want you to understand, and I want you to really hear me when I say this. None of these lessons is the magic answer. None of them alone will fix everything. The magic is in how they stack on top of each other. The magic is in what happens when you start small and you make it easy and you give it a home and you only focus on today and you don't miss twice and you can see your work and you've wrapped it in joy. When all of those things are in place at once, consistency stops feeling like a fight. It starts feeling like a life. Your life. The one you've been trying to live all along. I want to tell you what this actually looks like for a real person, because I think we've talked enough in principles. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a woman named Annie. She's 41. She lives in a small flat in Edinburgh. She works as a project manager at a company she doesn't love but can't yet leave. For most of her adult life, she's been telling herself she wants to be healthier, write more, read more, save more, and connect more deeply with the people she loves. And for most of her adult life, she's been failing at all of it. Not dramatically, just quietly. The way most people fail, with small repeated disappointments that slowly become the background music of a life. Then last year, something shifted. Annie didn't read a single self-help book. She didn't sign up for a course. She didn't suddenly find motivation. She just decided to try something different. She made every habit she wanted to build ridiculously small. She decided she'd only walk for 10 minutes after work. She'd only write for 5 minutes after her morning coffee. She'd only read 2 pages before bed. She'd only put away 10 pounds a week into savings. She didn't tell anyone because the goals felt almost embarrassing. They felt like nothing. But here's what happened. She didn't miss. Not really. Some days she missed one thing. But she never missed twice, and she put a small calendar on her fridge with 4 columns. Walk, write, read, save. Every day she did the thing, she put a dot in the column. That was the whole system. Walk, write, read, save. Dots on a fridge. Now skip ahead 12 months and look at what's actually happened. Annie has walked over 600 kilometers without trying. She's written the first draft of a book she never thought she'd write. She's read 31 books. She's saved over 2,000 pounds. She's lost weight she'd been trying to lose for a decade. She sleeps better than she has in years. Her partner has noticed she's calmer, lighter, more present. And here's the thing. None of this looks dramatic from the outside. None of it would make a good before and after photo. There's no transformation story. There's just a fridge with a lot of dots on it and a woman who got slightly better at her own life every single day until the days quietly added up to something almost unrecognizable. That's the truth I want you to take with you. Real change doesn't look like a movie. Real change looks like dots on a fridge. Real change looks like a person who walked 20 minutes today instead of 0. Real change looks like a sentence written, a page read, a snack skipped, a phone left in the other room, a small return after a slip. Each piece of it is tiny. Each piece of it is unimpressive. And yet, woven together over months and years, They become something that genuinely changes the entire shape of a life, not because of any single action, because of the rhythm, the slow, patient, repeated rhythm. And I want to say something now that I really hope lands for you. If you've been carrying around a quiet shame about all the times you've started and stopped, I want you to set that shame down right here, right now. You don't need it anymore. It's not making you better. It never has. Every time you tried something and let it slip, you weren't proving you're broken. You were gathering information about what doesn't work for you. You were learning, even when it didn't feel like learning. And now, with what you know from these 8 lessons, you have a different way forward, a gentler way, a smarter way, a way that doesn't require you to become someone else first. You don't need a new personality. You don't need more willpower. You don't need to wake up at 5 in the morning or cold plunge or follow some guru's 7-step morning routine. You just need to take one habit, just one, and walk it through these 8 ideas. Make it small. Don't wait for the mood. Make the environment easy. Give it a home in your day. Focus only on today. Never miss twice. Make the work visible. Wrap it in joy. That's it. That's the whole map. And it's a map that fits a real life, with a real job, with real exhaustion, with real responsibilities and complications and unexpected hard weeks. There's something I want to say about who you become through this process, because I think it matters more than the results themselves. When you live like this for a while, 6 months, a year, 2 years, something happens to your relationship with yourself. You start trusting yourself again. You stop being someone who breaks promises to herself. You become someone whose word, even when given quietly inside her own head, means something. And that internal trust, that quiet faith that when you say you'll do something, you actually will, is one of the most underrated treasures a human being can build. Most of the suffering people carry around about themselves isn't really about their results. It's about this broken relationship with their own follow-through. Heal that, and 1,000 small things in your life start healing with it. I want you to imagine yourself a year from now, not in some dramatic, transformed, unrecognizable way, just slightly different, slightly stronger, slightly more rested, slightly more skilled at the thing you've been wanting to learn, slightly closer to the work that actually matters to you, slightly more at peace inside your own skin. That's all this is asking of you. Not a revolution, an evolution, quiet, patient, almost invisible from day to day, but undeniable when you finally look back over the long stretch and see what you've built. And here's something I want to whisper to you before we go. Some of the most important things in your life are not going to look impressive while you're building them. The book you're writing, no one will know about until it's done. The body you're slowly recovering, no one will notice for months. The skill you're developing, no one will appreciate until it shows up in some moment you can't predict yet. The peace you're building inside yourself, no one will see at all. That doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means real things grow slowly and quietly, far below the surface, long before they become visible to anyone, including you. So don't trust the surface. Trust the practice. Trust the dots. Trust the small return after the small slip. The world rewards the visible, but the world is built by the invisible. And what you're doing in the quiet, repeated, unimpressive moments of your ordinary days, That is exactly where your future is being made. So if I could ask one thing of you, just one, as we come to the end of this, it would be this. Pick one habit, just one. Don't try to overhaul your life tonight. Don't write out the elaborate plan. Don't take the screenshot and never come back to it. Just pick one habit. Make it ridiculously small. Decide exactly when and where you'll do it tomorrow. Find one tiny piece of joy to wrap it in, and then do it tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. And if you slip on day 6, don't make a story out of it. Just come back on day 7, smaller if you need to. Just come back. That's the whole practice. That's everything. That's what separates the people who keep starting over from the people who quietly build remarkable lives. It's not talent. It's not motivation. It's not even discipline. Not really. It's the quiet decision made again and again to return. To return to the small thing. To return to the chair. To return to the page. To return to the running shoes by the door. The return is everything. The return is what builds the person. And the person slowly builds the life. Before I let you go, I want to thank you for staying. Truly. We live in a world that's been training us to need everything quickly, loudly, and constantly stimulating. The fact that you sat with a long, slow idea like this, that you let it unfold without rushing, that you stayed with it all the way to the end, that tells me something important about who you are. You're someone who can do this. You're someone who has the patience and the heart to build slowly. You wouldn't have made it this far if you didn't. Don't let any voice inside you tell you otherwise. The proof is right here. You stayed. You listened. You let yourself be changed a little. And one last thing. I know there's a voice in your head, maybe right now, that's already trying to be cynical. That's already saying, this sounds nice, but it won't work for me. I've heard things like this before, and nothing changed. I want you to notice that voice with kindness. That voice has kept you safe in some ways. It's protected you from disappointment by lowering your expectations. But it's also kept you stuck. And you don't have to fight it. You don't have to argue with it. You just have to do one small thing tomorrow, just one, and let the doing be louder than the doubting, because that voice has never built anything. The quiet, patient version of you, the one who's been listening to this, that's the one who builds. Trust her. She's the real one. You don't have to become a new person. You don't have to wait for the perfect Monday. You don't have to clean up your whole life before you begin. You just have to take the smallest possible step in the smallest possible direction toward the smallest possible version of who you're slowly becoming. And then keep stepping, quietly, gently, with great kindness toward yourself when you stumble, and great patience when nothing seems to be happening. Because something is happening. Something is always happening when you keep showing up. You just won't see it for a while. That's the truth of consistency. That's the truth of every habit, every skill, every transformation, every life that's ever been built by anyone, anywhere, ever. None of it looked impressive while it was being built. All of it looked impressive once it was done, and the only people who got from one to the other were the ones who kept walking through the unimpressive middle, one quiet, ordinary day at a time. That's you. That can be you, starting tomorrow, starting tonight, starting with one tiny thing that you absolutely, undeniably cannot fail to do. Go be that person. Go take the smallest step. Go build the life that's already waiting for you just on the other side of 100 ordinary days that you haven't lived yet. And remember, the next time you slip, and you will, that the only thing standing between you and the life you want is whether you come back the morning after. Just come back. That's all. Just come back and keep coming back until coming back is just who you are.